So now that we know where the Lab 8 data is on Canvas under modules for week 8, I'm going to go ahead and tab over to the remote desktop and hopefully log in here. So now I am using the remote desktop. And the first thing that we want to do to start the management unit digitizing project. So basically, if you're looking at the lab handout, I'm at page 7, Deadman Park Management Units. So I'm using the same procedures as we did during the in-class lab, but I'm doing it over again so that we can start working on this homework assignment. So the first thing we want to do is make a new project in ArcGIS Pro. Since I am using remote desktop, I'm going to save my project on the C drive. If you happen to be working on a PC that has ArcGIS Pro installed on it, you may choose to go ahead and save it on your Geek Stick, the E drive, or your flash drive, as it were, depending on what works best for you. But since I'm using remote desktop, I'm going to save my project file in the C drive for now while I'm working on it, and then when I'm done with it, or when I stop working on it, I can back it up to the N drive and save a backup of it there as well. So I'll go ahead and make a map project. I'm going to call it Lab 8 Deadman. I'm going to call it Lab 8 Remote, I guess. And it's saving on the C drive for remote desktop under My EID, which is Pinecone, and it saves in documents under ArcGIS and projects. So I want to go ahead and create that new project. And I've created a map project, so a new map's going to open up here. And as soon as I create that project, ArcGIS creates a new folder that project is stored in. And so if I minimize this, if I go into File Explorer, then I go into Documents, there's ArcGIS, Projects, and there's Lab 8 Remote. So that's the folder that we just created it's about 5:36 p.m. where I'm working on it right now. So go ahead, leave Arc minimized, and the next thing we want to do is open up Microsoft Excel. So go over here to the Start button, or the Windows key over there, and find your way to Microsoft Excel. And we're going to build a blank workbook. I'm not going to install these updates right now. And basically, we're going to build the same blank workbook, the same code that Rocky has earlier in the lab on page 1 or 2, depending on which copy of the lab handout you're looking at. So I'm talking about the one where he has a model Excel spreadsheet that you're going to build. Except this time we're going to use the set of coordinates that he gives us on page 7 of the handout. So where it says tick ID 11, 22, 33, 44, and then he has 4 different sets of longitude, latitude coordinates that we're going to type in as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start copying those coordinates from the handout into the table. So I leave one blank row at the top. And it's pretty important and definitely worth your while to make sure that you copy these in exactly as they're written so that your coordinates show up in the area of Colorado that we're hoping for them to. Definitely worth taking the time to make sure you got them in there right. 5. Let's see, you can make this column smaller if you want to match up with Rocky's example table, but that doesn't really matter right now. 52, 30. Now, if you had saved the ticks or coordinates table that you used for the in-class part of Lab 8, you could really just type in these new coordinates now, and that would work fine. But just in case you weren't there for that last week, or if you don't have access to that information you had previously, I'm just going to go ahead and build this table from scratch the way that Rocky had us do. So those are my 2 sets of, I've got my longitude, my latitude coordinates, and then let's see here. I'm going to leave another blank row here, H. And at the top of I, I'm going to write idtick, which is just code for the name, basically, that we're giving each of these 4 coordinates that will correspond to the 4 corners of the map we're looking at. So let's see here. A big X at the top of column J and a big Y at the top of column K. So in these 2 columns, we have to, the first part of what we're doing here is we're trying to convert these sets of coordinates from minutes, degrees, seconds into decimal degrees, because when we import these coordinates into ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Pro doesn't like degrees, minutes, seconds. It prefers decimal degrees. So that's all we're doing here, same as we did on the in-class assignment. So I'm still just copying the equation from Rocky's example table earlier in the lab handout. So you'll find that on the first page, I believe. And I'm just copying the coordinates here, or sorry, I'm copying the equations here that are going to convert our degrees, minutes, and seconds into decimal degrees. So I've got, very important to make sure you have this negative sign since we're in the Western Hemisphere, or else your coordinates are going to show up somewhere else on the Earth, maybe in Africa. And if you don't want to be digitizing units in sub-Saharan Africa right now, it's important to get that negative sign where it's supposed to be. Divided by 3600. So there is my first, this just converted my degrees, minutes, and seconds into decimal degrees here. And once you have the formula in one of these cells, if you click this lower right-hand corner of the cell, see where that little box is? You can just drag it down and it will copy that formula for the next few cells, however far you drag it, and it'll update the information to go with the corresponding row. So this is the decimal degree equivalent of these cells, and this is the decimal degree equivalent of these cells. Now we have to get our y coordinates, so same sort of process. Let's see here. For this one, we do not need a minus sign, so no extra parentheses on this one. And let's see here. And for those of you who weren't there for that lab, the way this formula is working is our degrees just carry over, so 105's over here is 105. But our minutes, to get that as a decimal, since there's 60 minutes in a degree, we have to get a decimal version of that. So we get the number of minutes, 52 for instance, divided by 60 will give us the decimal version for the minutes, and then 60 times 60 for the seconds. There's 3,600 seconds in a degree. So we take our seconds value and divide that by 3,600. And again, once you have this formula in the top cell for y, we can drag it down, and then we have our coordinates. So the next thing that we want to do here, getting messages all over the place. Let's see here. The next thing that we want to do is now we're going to save this file. So I recommend saving it twice just in case you have to edit it. So go to File, and this is kind of up to you. I'm going to save it on this PC, and I'm going to save it in the ArcGIS project that we just created. So you want to find your Lab 8 folder that was just created under Documents, ArcGIS Projects, Lab 8, and I'm going to save this as, let's see here, I'll call it, what does Rocky call it in here? I'm going to call this Coordinates Excel, but we're also going to save one that's a CSV file. So just in case I made a mistake here, I'm saving this as an Excel workbook. So I'm going to save it like that. But all that did was just save this general Excel file in case I made a mistake and had to go back and fix it. What we really want to bring it into Arc is we want to save it as a comma delimited or .csv file. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Save As. Make sure that you're browsing. Again, you want to be in this ArcGIS, projects, whatever you called your Lab 8 folder. Don't save it inside of the GDB folder, save it inside of this one. So I'm just going to call this one coordinates, and this time I'm going to save that file type as comma delimited. Now you might notice that there are some other CSV type files here. Don't fall for it. Go for the one that's called CSV parentheses comma delimited and nothing else. So I'm going to select that, I call it coordinates, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And it's going to ask if you still want to save it in this format, saying that you might lose some features, and that's okay. And as a backup, I already saved mine as an Excel workbook before with a different name, so I'm in the clear either way. But the answer is going to be yes, we do want to save it as a CSV file here. All right, so in just a moment here, we'll go back into Arc and we'll bring in those coordinates.